That's just life, I guess. In a classroom full of kids, whose eyes were hypnotized by the clock on the wall, sat one particular boy, wearing a dark blue sweatshirt. He had a lanky frame, short brown hair, and the same unenthusiastic look as every one of his classmates. It was the last lesson on Friday, so the only thing keeping them away from freedom was that damn clock. "Come on, can someone tell me what this is?" the teacher said with an annoyed look. The boy lifted his gaze and looked at the blackboard with a bunch of acid formulas. "I know it's the last lesson, but at least try," the teacher said desperately. After hearing the teacher's plea, the boy finally lifted his arm and in a quiet tone answered. "Citric acid." With a sigh, the teacher responded by saying, "Thank you, Mark, at least someone listens to me." Then the bell rang, causing the students to start aggressively packing their bags and running out of the classroom. Mark packed up his stuff and also headed out of the classroom, but as he was passing through the door, his teacher interrupted him. "Mark, did you already decide on which university you want to go to?" "No, I'm still not really sure," he responded. "I'm telling you, if you don't know, with your talent, you can surely be a great chemist." "I'll think about it," said Mark and left the classroom, heading home. He had a lot to think about. Whenever he was asked about his future, he became nervous. "What do you want to be?" "I don't know," he always answered. "You're 17 already and you don't know. You should decide quickly." Such things were often said by his relatives and it irritated him. He was not dumb, actually pretty much the opposite was true. He excelled in several subjects. The problem was his disinterest in any of the things he was good at. So when he thought about his future, the image was dark. He was often jokingly said he'll just be a fast food worker. However, that was just a way to mask how he truly looked at his future. After a 10-minute walk, he arrived in front of his home. It was a quite spacious flat on the 3rd floor. He opened the doors and stepped inside. As he was taking off his shoes, Mark noticed an unfamiliar pair of boots and the turned-on TV. Did Dad invite someone over? He thought to himself. Today, we have a famous host on our show. Leader of the Scavenger Guild, Thomas Andre. Tell me, Thomas, WH. He stepped into the living room and spotted a man lying on the couch watching TV. He had a burly frame and a face similar to Mark's. "I didn't know you were coming over," said Mark to the unexpected guest. "Yeah, I've got a few days off so I could visit," said his brother Brian. Brian was 26 years old, making their age gap nearly 10 years. Mark's big brother was a successful guy. He graduated from law school and quickly moved out of their parents' house. He was sociable, friendly, and passionate, just the kind of man Mark would want to be. "That's all you're gonna tell your big brother?" asked Brian with a smirk. "I guess," said Mark and walked away into his room, leaving Brian laughing at his answer. He threw his backpack to the corner of his room and jumped on the bed. Every day was the same to him. Wake up, go to school, survive the wrath of his English teacher, come home, chat with his friends and family, play some video games, study for the next day and do homework, go to sleep, rinse and repeat. He wanted something to be passionate about, something fun, something that could break this vicious cycle. But wishing for some miracle to happen was just wasting time with a fancy ring to it, so Mark got up and turned on his computer. At that moment he was assaulted by the barrage of notifications from his class group chat. His friends and classmates had ambitions and dreams they wanted to fulfill. Although some of them were unrealistic, you can always aim high. Mark's own problems felt insignificant to what other people lived through. He wasn't from a poor family nor was he abused in any way. He was lucky to be born without any disabilities and a good head on his shoulders. "What are you complaining about? Your life is awesome." "I guess you're right," he always answered. He opened news on his browser and looked through the sensational headlines. Rumors of a new S-rank hunter appearing. A fight between two A ranks. Click to see more. Gate outbreak in uptown Manhattan. Are we really safe? There was one group of people who got the most attention in this world, hunters. They had the burden of defending this world with their own hands, so they were subjected to a lot of praise, but also critique. With their power, they practically ruled the world at this point. 5 years ago, being a magician who killed monsters for money was just a fantasy many watched on their TV screens, but now it was reality, and oh boy was this reality cruel. With a low chance of awakening and even a lower chance of awakening as anything higher than an E rank, most people had to depend on the power-hungry douchebags with superpowers and live through their lives hoping that a gate wouldn't open in front of their house. Mark left his room and headed to the toilet, but as he passed through the living room his brother called out to him. "Bro, your eyes are glowing," said Brian from the couch. "Wah, Before Mark could even say a word, he fell face first to the floor. Brian ran to him panicking and asked, "Are you all right?" Seeing Mark motionless on the ground, he concluded, "I get it, that's a stupid question." Awakened. Mark woke up in a hospital room. He immediately noticed a man in his 50s with graying hair dozing off in the corner of the room. Why did I collapse out of nowhere? He asked himself, getting ready for the worst. I have a fucking cancer. I don't wanna die yet. He started panicking in his own mind. Dad, he shouted at his father in the corner. Huh, I'm awake. His dad responded in confusion. Second later he understood where he was. Tell me honestly, how many days do I have left? Asked Mark. His father chuckled at this absurd question before saying, "What are you babbling about? You're fine, I was just waiting for you to wake so I can get you home." Oh, then what happened and where is Brian? He drove you here and went home as soon as the doctors told him you were fine. It's 2 a.m, we should also go home. Yeah, right, said Mark, getting off of the hospital bed. The doctor said you lost consciousness due to a sudden awakening and then you broke your nose when you fell on the ground. I'm awakened now, I don't really feel any different, Mark said without any surprise. I booked your evaluation for tomorrow. No, right, tomorrow is today, so the evaluation is actually today. Never mind, let's go get some sleep. They left the hospital, heading home to get some quality sleep. Later that day, "Next, Mr. Williams," shouted an old lady. Mark looked at his dad in the waiting room, asking if he is going as well with his eyes. Seeing his father not moving, Mark stepped inside the evaluation room. An old lady in her 60s was standing next to a control panel with many displays. "First put your hand on that ball," she said, pointing to a big black ball in the middle of the room. Mark put his hand on the device, which made some unnerving noises and displayed the result to the woman. A rank magic power. You're a lucky young man. Now show me your skills. Mark lifted his eyebrows and thought, skills? What skills? Come on, do something. Everyone has something of their own. Some can transform into monsters, others can heal. There are even people with invisibility. You have to have something of your own. I can see magic, probably. I'm not really sure. Not sure, probably, what do you mean? Everyone can see magic, that's not something only hunters can do. No, like I can see magic power. For example, in the black ball, I saw magic power travel through some wires. Mark tried to explain. Yes, that is remarkably useless, she said, writing it down on a computer. Don't call me useless, you old hag, thought Mark, irritated at her comment. Now, put your hand in that device and grab the thing inside with all your strength, she said. Mark nodded and once again did what she told him. D-rank strength. You are not as lucky as I thought. You can pull your hand out. Mark was not expecting much anyway. His chance of getting a meaningful skill was tiny, so he was happy with what he got. A stronger physique is never a bad thing, even if it is just a little stronger. You have A-rank magic power, which is not usable, cause you lack any meaningful skills in D-rank physique. I'll classify you as a D rank, but if you really want a higher rank you can get re-evaluated. I'm sure someone else will give you at least a C rank. There are a few things I need to tell you. Since you are a minor, you cannot enter a dungeon without the approval of your legal representative, you cannot form a guild or a raiding party. Your hunter's license will arrive in about a week with a few papers full of rules you have to abide by in the dungeon. Any questions? No, ma'am. Then we're finished. Next, Ms. Jones. Mark left the room, passing by a woman in her 20s with long black hair who was practically soaring with magic power. They've got another S rank, it seems. She noticed a white glow in Mark's blue eyes that were watching her with apathy and continued on her way to the evaluation. So how did it go? Asked Josh, Mark's father. I'm a D rank. Pretty good, that calls for a celebration. He shouted. Mark loved his father very much, but his loud personality wasn't a great combination with his own. He didn't feel comfortable with all the people in the waiting room staring at them. How about we just get some ice cream? Mark suggested. Okay, ice cream will do just fine, his father said, and they left the building. Home, Mark and his father were sitting on the couch watching TV while eating ice cream. That woman is familiar. Do you know who she is? Asked Josh with a mouthful of ice cream. We are here today in New York with a new S-rank hunter. Emma Jones. Tell me, how did you feel receiving such an honor? Yeah, we met her in the waiting room today. The world really is small, huh? I take this opportunity seriously and I will try my best to protect the less fortunate, answered the new S-rank hunter. So have you decided which guild you'll be joining? asked the reporter. I've already gotten several offers, but I'm not set on a particular one just yet. I bet she's going to the Scavenger Guild, said Josh. Why do you think so? Asked Mark. They've got the most money, they're the biggest guild, they can provide the best opportunities. Just what young people want, fame and money. You wanna bet? No, I guess you're right. You want any more ice cream? I won't refuse such an offer, said Mark's father with a smile, a new passion. Even after awakening, Mark's life didn't change. He wasn't dumb enough to throw away his education for a quick buck he could get by clearing dungeons. The job of a hunter was extremely dangerous, especially for the lower-ranked ones. It was Sunday, so Mark was doing his homework, writing mathematical equations for hours, because the teacher wanted to make sure they actually learned. Wasn't fun. It also wasn't effective because copying homework was a thing. His mind drifted elsewhere as he started drawing scribbles on the paper. As he drew a little campfire on the paper, the drawing shone and the paper caught on fire. What the fuck? Shouted Mark, throwing the paper on the ground, stomping out the fire. You all right? A voice came from the living room. I'm fine, Dad, he shouted back. Mark opened the window to let in some fresh air. He then tore off a little bit of paper and drew the same little fire symbol. At first, nothing happened, but as he touched the drawing with his finger, he saw magic power leaving his body, traveling through the pencil lead. The symbol then started shining in white, lighting up the paper. I'm a goddamn wizard, Mark thought to himself in shock. Even though he was awakened, he didn't take it seriously. He was not interested in running through hordes of goblins, cleaving them with a sword. However, if he could create his own magic, then that would be a totally different matter. He opened his browser and searched for runes. Runestones are rare drops from dungeons, giving the hunter who breaks them special skills. No, how about magic circles? Magic circles sometimes appear when a hunter casts particular spells. Their meaning is not understood. No, well, let's try skills then. Hunters awaken special skills that are unique to their class. Skills come in a great variety, with some people displaying unique skills. Unique skills. Do I have a unique skill? What about magic circle images? He zoomed in on the first image, which was a big magic circle of a spell called Fire Pillar. To Mark's surprise, he could read the symbols written on the circle. Flame, spew, delay, speed, mana, direction, amount. It looked like some kind of a program. However, it was written in vague symbols, not in concrete words, making Mark fascinated by how does magic work. The boy grabbed another piece of paper and started drawing many symbols with his pencil. It looked like a first grader's art homework, but in Mark's eyes, it was a way he could cast magic spells. Maybe he didn't have to go to college or work in a McDonald's if he became a hunter in a safe way. He could find a way to prepare for every possible foe and every unexpected circumstance by inventing his own spells for the specific situations. With his A-rank magic power, he could live freely, just by clearing D-rank dungeons. He will be called a coward for not using his power for the greater good, but so what? I won't be hurting anyone. The pretentious lady from TV can go fuck herself. Saving the world isn't my responsibility. I'll be 18 in a month, then I can go to the dungeon. 1 month is enough time to prepare. Next day, Mark sat in the classroom with a brown hardback book on his desk. He didn't sleep a minute, because of his fascination for the magic he could create. After several hours of testing, writing and drawing, he finally created something he could call a magic spell. He then wrote the spell into an empty book he found while looking through some old stuff in the basement. Page 1. Spell name, Stream of Fire. Description. Mana is redirected from the book to your other hand, creating a magic circle between your fingers. By moving your fingers, you can manipulate the intensity, distance, and temperature of the flames spewing out of your hand. You can also lock the settings by clenching your fist. Under the description was the actual spell, which looked just like a bunch of random drawings. He was very proud of his creation, so he brought his grimoire to school to work on another spell. One thing he understood by doing many experiments was that he had a lot of mana, but terrible control over it. He could decide if he sends mana out of his body or not, thereby activating the spells written inside the book, but he couldn't control the amount of mana. You good? You look like you just woke up from your death, said a blonde-haired guy sitting next to Mark. I'm all right, just a bit tired, answered Mark, rubbing his eyes. Did you do the math homework? Asked his classmate. Depends on whether or not you have $10. Oh come on, aren't we friends? We're friends only when it is beneficial to you. You wouldn't even hesitate to throw me under the bus if it was good for you, he thought to himself. Everything has a price. My effort isn't free, so if you want the homework give me $10. Mark said with his hand outstretched ready to receive the money. Geez, you didn't have to go all philosophical on me, said the blonde handing over the money. Mark gave him the piece of paper and aimed his focus back to the spell creation. What if I create a barrier with one layer that is mana dense and another that is less dense than the air? Then I could use the mana sucked into the less dense layer to strengthen the denser layer, making the barrier stronger. That way I could effectively block attacks from magicians much stronger than myself with a low mana cost. I think this is worth a try. Finally, having found his passion, Mark poured his heart into the grimoire. That's illegal, bro. A month has passed since Mark has awakened his powers. Hey, don't you think Mark is acting kinda weird lately? Well, he was always a pretty strange guy, so it's not really anything new. Yeah, but it's extreme these past few weeks. He doesn't talk to anyone and he's always writing something. Why do you care so much? Just mind your own business, my dude. I don't know, man, I think he's up to something. Mark was aware that his classmates didn't have a good opinion of him for the last month. There were rumors about him taking drugs or drinking alcohol, but that didn't concern him. He has filled 4 pages in his grimoire, which isn't a lot, but considering the complexity of the spells and no good experimentation target, Mark was happy nonetheless. When he became an 18-year-old, a new problem appeared. He was not a part of any guild, so the only way to enter a gate was to join some unknown raid group. His spells were made to solo the dungeons, not for teamwork. Accounting for allies was much more difficult when creating a spell. Walking back home, he thought of a way to get to the dungeon alone. When he couldn't find a solution, he did something unthinkable. He called a friend for help. *BZZN**BZZN**. The phone rang for a whole minute without a response. God damn it, he's sleeping for sure. Leaving a text to his dad saying, "I'm going to Drew's place," he set off towards his friend's house. He arrived in front of a terraced house after a quick ride in a taxi. Ding sounded the bell. In a minute, a woman in her 40s with curly brown hair opened the door. "Hi Mark, Drew didn't say you were coming over. Come on in," she said with a welcoming smile. "Yeah, well, he wasn't responding to my calls, so I thought I'd just come here," Mark explained while taking off his shoes. "I have nothing prepared for you. At least I'll make some tea. Which one do you want?" No, I'm fine, really. I don't need anything. Green tea it is, then," she said, leaving the hallway. Quote. After a moment of pause, Mark went upstairs to meet his friend. He opened the door and saw a wasteland. Dirty clothes on the ground, many empty bottles of lemonade rolling on the table, and one guy snoring on his bed. "Are you alive?" asked Mark, trying to wake up the sleeping Drew. When he saw that Drew was not waking up, he lightly slapped him on the face. "Ouch, what is wrong with you?" shouted Drew. "Stop overreacting." Now fully awake, Drew asked, "How did you even get here?" "Your mom let me in. I'm going to have to talk with her about this. She's probably gonna have a talk with you about the state of your room if you don't do anything about it. It could be worse. There's mold growing in the bottles, man. Nobody wants to see this getting any worse." "Never mind that, why did you come over? Do you know a way to get into a dungeon alone? Like sneak into a dungeon?" "Don't do that. That's illegal, bro." "No, you idiot. I'm not planning on going to jail just yet. I want to know if there is a way to get into a dungeon alone legally." "Well, if you were an S rank, that'd be easy. You could just call the FBH and say you're going to the dungeon, but with your rank it's difficult." "Can't you ask your dad to let me into one?" "Ah yes, of course, I can. It'll go like this. Father dearest, can you let my 18-year-old friend into a dungeon, alone?" And he'll go, "Of course, I'd love to risk my job in the FBH because one of your friends wants to go kill himself in a dungeon. How else would it go, genius?" "Okay, I guess asking your dad is out of the picture." The door opened with Drew's mother holding a cup of tea. "Thank you, Mrs. Coleman. You're welcome," she responded, gave Mark the tea, and left the room. "Wait, how about we go on an excursion to the dungeon with school? Eternal sleep exists. You'd have to know if there isn't someone prone to it in your class, so no. Why do you want to go to the dungeon so much anyway? I thought you didn't want to be a hunter." "It's complicated." Later at home, having no other option, Mark decided to turn to the Federal Bureau of Hunters and participate in clearing a low-ranked gate. Fortunately, it was quite easily done through the FBH website. He quickly found a gate with the low magic reading and reserved his position. There was already a fighter, a tank, a ranger, and a healer booked, so there shouldn't be a problem in the clearing. First time. *BZZN*BZZN. Mark's hand almost automatically turned off the alarm clock on his mobile phone. What a great start to this Saturday, he thought to himself as he crawled out of his bed. Putting on a dark blue shirt, a pair of trousers and some comfortable socks, he went to the bathroom. He then brushed his teeth and came back to his room to prepare for today's raid. The raid will start at 10 a.m. so I have about 2 hours to get there. Mark packed his grimoire into a backpack and went out. Passing by his father, he told him, "I'm going out with Drew. I'll be back at like 4 or 5. I'm not sure." "All right, take care," his dad said, waving at him. Mark quickly arrived at a nearby bus station and boarded the buses heading to a place a short distance from the dungeon site. Having found a comfortable place to sit in the last row, he pulled up his phone to look through the news. The new S-rank hunter Emma Jones joins the scavenger guild. Hey, Dad was right. Fortunately, I didn't take the bet. America was a large country with over 60 S-rank hunters in total, and the fight over them was fierce, especially with the scavenger guild, which recruited even from different countries. They had around 20 S-ranks in their arsenal. That's an army capable of overthrowing the US. Then in second place with less than 10 S-ranks was the Viper Guild. Their leader Alexander Wright was rumored to be the best assassin-type hunter in this country. In the third place, just behind the Vipers, came the Zeus Guild, whose leader was a powerful mage who awakened with lightning magic. His insane offensive power was known around the world. Mark then read through the article, finding out more about the new S-rank. She apparently awakened as a fighter type, then was scouted by the scavenger, and now she will go through some training regimen provided by her guild. Mark left the bus after 20 minutes of staring at his phone and headed to the dungeon site. There stood a provisional cabin one could find on a construction site. He stepped into the cabin and the people inside stared at him without saying a word. "Hello," said Mark. "Am I in the right place?" he asked himself. "Are you here for the raid?" asked a man, holding a crossbow. "Yeah, great, we can start, then," said a middle-aged man with a mace and a small shield. "I'm Rick, the raid leader, and AD rank tank. You should also be a fighter, right?" Rick asked, confused at the absence of a weapon in Mark's hands. The lady evaluating Mark has classified him as AD rank fighter, due to the apparent lack of his magician skills. "Mark, by the way, and I'm actually a mage. There was a mistake in the evaluation which I haven't fixed yet." "Even better, we don't have a mage, so you'll come in handy. That is my daughter Ava." He pointed to a girl a few years older than Mark with a spear by her side. "I'm Alan." The ranger with crossbow shook his hand. "Friendly guy." "Hal," said another guy who Mark assumed was the healer. This was a low-rank gate with low-rank hunters, so nobody wore any kind of armor. Even the weapons they had, excluding Alan's crossbow, were kind of shabby. "Everyone's here, so let's go. Leave your phones in the cabin. You don't want them broken." "You don't have to say it every time," said Ava. Mark emptied his backpack, grabbed his grimoire, and left the cabin. Then Rick locked the cabin and everyone headed towards the gate. "Is this your first time?" asked Alan with a smirk. "Yes," Mark answered swiftly. "Don't hesitate in killing a monster and listen to what Rick says. That's the best advice I can give you." "Thanks, I guess." With that, they walked through the blue vortex of swirling mana. Mark found himself in a dark cave which was quickly illuminated by a lantern lit by Hal. Rick walked in the lead, focusing on every little sound that echoed through the dungeon. "It's quiet, a little too quiet," thought Mark, opening his grimoire. As they were walking through the narrow cave, they came across a crossroad with many paths. "I hear the sound of walking from there," said Alan, pointing into a dark cave with his crossbow. "Is it coming here?" asked Rick. Alan nodded and everyone assumed a formation. Rick was in the front with his daughter just behind him. In the middle were Alan and Mark, and Hal was safely in the back. The steps were now audible even for Mark, so he poured his mana into the grimoire, creating a magic circle on his right hand. A giant iguana-like lizard came running out of the hole. Alan took aim and shot an arrow straight through the head of the reptile, instantly killing it. "That's either a skill or a bit too strong crossbow." Noticing Mark's look, Alan gave him a cocky smile. The monsters heard the arrow scraping the cave walls and came in running. Big snakes and giant lizards headed right towards Rick when they saw the dead iguana. Rick swung his mace, spilling lizard guts everywhere. Ava stabbed the snakes as if it was her last day alive, and Alan shot everything moving with pristine accuracy. However, Mark was left with no space to do anything. There is not enough space for page 1, page 3 is unusable with people around, and page 4 is a one-target spell. "I should have prepared more for raiding in a team." "Oh, that's hot," After an hour in the dungeon, the lizards finally stopped coming on their own. There were over 100 corpses piled up in the crossroads. Hal was releasing the team of their exhaustion as they rested on the cold ground. However, Mark was disheartened by his performance. The great teamwork gave him no space to actually use his potential. Getting up from the ground, Alan came up to Mark and handed him a small knife. "Come on, I'll show you how to salvage essence stones from the monsters." They crouched over the corpse of the iguana monster. "The essence stones are around the important organs, so first let's try the head," said Alan, guiding Mark to cut through the rough scales of the iguana. "No, that's just the brain, then that means it's near the heart." He opened up the chest of the corpse and found a shining white stone. "I wanna puke." Mark was not very accustomed to dealing with dismembered animals, outside of the usual dissecting in biology class, so his reaction was natural. "Are you alright?" asked Alan. "Yeah, it's just a bit nauseating. You'll get used to the smell of blood if you clear enough dungeons." After a moment of resting, the group got to salvaging the essence stones. Even Mark got used to it by the 10th monster. Knife goes in, essence stone goes out. When they finally got all the essence stones out, they could continue in the raid. However, there were countless possible paths, so which one should they choose? It was quite easily solved by Mark. The fiery mana leaking from one of the caves gave the boss away. "I think the boss is that way," said Mark. "Alright, we don't really have a better way, so let's go there first." "Is everyone ready for the final battle?" asked Rick. "I couldn't be more ready," said Alan, while the others just nodded. Rick led the way through the tunnel. As they walked deeper into the cave, the air was getting progressively hotter. "It's like 90 degrees in here. What kind of boss monster is this?" "A living sauna?" asked Ava with an annoyed look, wiping sweat off of her forehead. "I'm not sure, I never came across anything like this," Rick said, advancing forward. "A temperature control spell and a spell that makes a moving source of light. This is a great learning opportunity." Nothing triumphs first-hand experience, it seems. Mark thought, planning his future precautions. The raid team took a turn in the tunnel and red light assaulted their eyes. "We're here." Going further, they found themselves in a large nest which was illuminated in dim light. Their eyes trailed towards the source of the light and found a car-sized lizard. It was covered in dark scales, with the red light propagating in between the scales. With every breath, it exhaled a puff of smoke from its nostrils. Thankfully it was sleeping. "Dragon. No, it has no wings, so a salamander." Seeing the boss, Alan used his skill power shot and fired the arrow, aiming right at the closed eye of the salamander. The monster was caught off guard and screeched at the horrible pain caused by the embedded arrow. "I expected it to go deeper," Rick said. "That's what she said." Alan joked around, even in this sweaty situation. "God damn it, focus." Ava shouted and brought back the severity of the situation. The boss monster charging at them full speed. Before Rick could use his taunt skill, Mark already acted. Page 2, Magic Siphoning Barrier. After setting up the spell options, a white translucent barrier just about a centimeter thick appeared in front of Rick. Salamander ignored the barrier, opened its jaws, and breathed fire on them. When the barrier got into contact with the flames, it sucked them into itself and started burning like a wall of flames. "I haven't thought of that. So first I have to purify the mana before condensing it into the barrier. However, this also has great implications. Maybe I can make something to redirect attacks with this." Salamander wasn't happy with its attacks not coming through, but it had to take a breather, so it stopped spitting out flames for a moment. This was a great opportunity and Mark didn't leave it hanging. He dispelled the white magic circle on his hand and created another one, with this one being light blue. Page 4, Targeted Freezing. Small white light went flying out of the magic circle and hit the salamander, doing no damage. However, that was just a magic flare. The moment it hit the monster, a wave of snow left the magic circle, assaulting the salamander at high speed. Since salamanders are monsters living in volcanoes, the wave of frost became a slow and agonizing death to the lizard. Getting covered in a layer of ice which then melts and then freezes as more ice comes along, the salamander became an ice statue in a minute. Alan was AC rank hunter with the most experience in this party. The experience gave him enough confidence to joke around in the gate, but seeing Mark defeat a dungeon boss all by himself in his first raid gave him a slap back to reality. "This doesn't look like a small mistake in the evaluation, buddy. You're AC rank at the absolute least," Alan told Mark with a smile. "Yeah, if I knew how much firepower you were packing, I'd involve you more," Rick added. Mark ignored what they were saying and asked, "How much is the corpse worth?" Normally D-rank boss in a perfect condition could be sold around the 3000 mark. However, they usually don't have any elemental properties, so this one is probably more like 5000. Rick said, looking at the frozen salamander. Can I take a few scales? Would it like affect the price or something? Rick looked at Hal with a helpless look, saying, help me, I don't know, with his eyes. Hal sighed and answered Mark's question. They won't even notice. With that revelation, Mark started tediously gathering scales into his backpack. Money, money, money. After defeating the boss, the raid group had to drag it out of the gate. Despite their awakened bodies, it was no easy task since the salamander weighed a few tons. When they got the monster out, they returned to the cabin. So we have 117 essence stones. That's around 6k, 5.7k if we count taxes. Dividing that between 5 people, it's 1,000 for each of us, and I'm not even counting the boss. Hal was counting the profits. This guy completely changes personality when it comes to money. Mark thought when watching Hal. Hal seemed distant and quiet during the whole exploration, but now he was eager to jump into a pool of essence stones like Scrooge McDuck. That's one of the best raids in my career, Rick said, cleaning his mace from the dried lizard blood. When I'll be done with the reports, I'll send you all your shares. Depends on the FBH, but it should be done in 2 days or less. The boss money will come later though, announced Hal. I'll take 3 of these, so deduct that from my share, said Mark, and grabbed 3 white essence stones from the pile. Fine, you'll get $150 less then, said Hal, and packed the remaining stone into his bag. Rick, I have a question for you, said Mark. Ask right away. Is there a way to get into the dungeon alone? No, why would you want to do that? This was your first gate. Do you even understand how dangerous dungeons are? You could die, said Rick. This feels like a scolding, Mark thought when he heard the visibly agitated Rick. Don't be like that, Alan said, holding Rick by his shoulder. If he wants to go alone, tell him how. Some people need to learn how to appreciate teamwork. He is not an idiot. He'll be cautious. Alright, but if you die, then I'll come and kick your ass in the afterlife. You hear me? Sure, Mark answered, not really sure what to say in this situation. It's quite simple, actually. When you book a dungeon on the FBH site, you can lock the maximal amount of hunters if you are registered as a raid leader. If you are at least 2 ranks above the dungeon, you can set the maximum on 1. So get your re-evaluation and then you can do it. Thank you, that will help a lot. Don't you dare forget about the potential ass kicking. I won't, okay, don't worry. Geez, this guy is insistent. Also, if you want to raid some dungeons with us in the future, just call me. We will always take someone like you, Rick said, handing him a business card. Richard Duncan, D-rank hunter, XXXXXX4X. I'll call you someday, Mark said, grabbing his phone, ready to head back home. For now, goodbye. Bye, said the group of hunters. Mark walked to the bus stop and waited for another bus. This is getting tiring. I'll have to get re-evaluated. I just hope I won't get that old hag behind the counter again. Can I take a seat next to you? A feminine voice brought him back from his thoughts. Mark looked up from the pavement only to see a blonde-haired girl around his age staring down at him. Don't worry, I won't bite, she said with a giggle. No problem, Mark responded and moved a little bit to the side to make some space on the bench. Where are you going? I went to buy some groceries because, you know, we just moved here and don't have many things home. So I wanted to familiarize myself with the surroundings. Jesus Christ, please stop. Half an hour later. I'm sorry. Don't be. It's fine, Mark said, watching the pavement with empty eyes. No, it's not. I always do this. Running my mouth too much and bothering other people, she told him, sounding truly apologetic. Just tone it down in the future. Right, I will try. Finally, Mark could enjoy a moment of silence. He turned on his phone to see when will the bus arrive. So you're a hunter, didn't you say you will keep quiet? He asked, lifting his eyebrow. I said I'll try, she said with a wide grin. Mark turned off his phone and put it in his pocket, hoping that time would fly by quicker this way. Yeah, I'm a hunter. How did you know? I'll tell you, but it's my secret method, so you can't tell anyone. Okay, your trousers are stained in blood and you stink. There was also the chance of you being a murderer, but I ruled that out, she said with glee. Thanks for the compliment, I guess. Mark indifferently responded. It's all right. You stink nowhere near to my dad when he comes from a dungeon. Your dad's a hunter. My dad and my brother are both hunters, she said with pride. That's extremely lucky. What is that, like 1 in a million chance? I dunno. Don't really care about that. Anyway, what's your rank? She asked, poking Mark in the side. F rank. Haha, very funny. It's funny to me. Come on, why don't you wanna tell me? What do I know, you could be an assassin trying to kill me. The girl burst into laughter after hearing that. Why would you even think that? It's quite simple. A girl approaches me, which is strange to start with, and starts talking to me. She shares some of her information to get me to believe her, and then she tries to get my personal info. So maybe you are not an assassin and more of a scammer. Just waiting for you to ask me about the 3 funky numbers at the back of my credit card. Okay, I won't ask about that. On another note, what is your mother's maiden name? Mark laughed half-heartedly at the joke, and as he saw the bus arriving he stood up from the bench. All right, mysterious lady, I guess we'll never meet again, so have a good day. Oh, don't say that. You know how awkward it would be if we met tomorrow. Mark said one last bye before boarding the bus. Transfer student. Mark was sitting in his room with many papers on his desk. After yesterday's dungeon raid he became excited about creating new spells. The new experience brought him ideas he hasn't thought about before and options that weren't available a few days earlier. He rubbed another piece of paper over the first page of his grimoire and the writings disappeared. This was horribly inefficient, he thought at his creation. He then grabbed a paintbrush, dipped it in water and in sparkly white dust. The conductivity of the essence stones is phenomenal. There should be at least double increase in the power of my spells. The moment Mark got his hands on the essence stones he thought about using them instead of pencil lead in his spells. The problem was actually making the writing with the stones. He had to create a tool to apply them on paper. As he made the first stroke, letters started to shine on the brush, liquefying the stones. Over Sunday he managed to rewrite all of his previous spells with magic stones and even improve them. After writing some drafts he went to bed. His hunter life had to be left on pause for the week. Next day, Mark took a seat in the first row of the classroom. Some teachers overlooked his lack of interest in their subject and let him do his things. He opened the notebook with his drafts. The lighting spell needs quite a complex movement to work smoothly. I need to make it avoid obstacles better, he thought, looking at the spell draft. The bell rang, signalizing the start of the lesson. Despite the wishes of all the students present, the teacher arrived 5 minutes later and with a boy in tow. He looked pretty handsome with short dirty blonde hair, a sporty frame, and a friendly smile. All right kids, this is Lucas. He'll join the class for the rest of the year. If you have any questions I won't answer them. Go find yourself a seat. He sent the guy away. Hope you did your homework, because, said the teacher starting the lesson. Break. Guys were swarming Lucas's desk like flies. They barraged him with questions. All right, I'll introduce myself. My full name is Lucas Wright. We moved because Dad didn't want to drive an hour every morning to his job. I'm actually from New Jersey. What do you do for fun? Asked one of the guys. Whoa, don't start throwing riddles at me like that, he chuckled. But when you're asking, I'm a hunter. He smiled with that answer. You go hunting in Gates for fun? Asked another guy, unbelieving of what he was hearing. Of course, there is no better feeling than when blood is pumping through your veins in an intense battle. Lucas said with a burning passion in his eyes. So you're like a fighter? Asked a girl. Yes, I fight with a sword. Are you strong? Lucas chuckled at the question and came up with a challenge. What do you think? If you want to test it we can arm wrestle. 1v2, 1v3, even versus the whole class if you want. The boys didn't let this slide. Just you wait. They grouped up on one side of the desk with Lucas on the other. 7 high school students locked hands with a B-rank hunter. Okay, are you ready? Asked Lucas with a cocky smirk. Yeah, the boys shouted in unison. All right, then start. Lucas started the battle, his face distorted as he pushed against the group. In spite of the boys' efforts, Lucas's hand didn't move a bit. Then out of nowhere, the hunter's face returned to a smile. I expected more of you, he said with a laugh. Lucas's hand smashed to the table as if there was no resistance. That's the B-rank strength, baby, he flaunted his power. Wait, you're B-rank? Which guild are you in? Asked a girl. Viper Guild, and a promised position in one of the attack teams after graduation. Wow, how did you get such a promise from the Vipers as a high schooler? The girl asked, confused. That's a secret, Lucas said with a finger over his lips. He then headed out of the classroom to the restroom. However, as he was passing by Mark he became intrigued by his scribbles. Hey, if you want it, homework is $10. Mark interrupted him without turning his gaze away from the drafts. No, you misunderstood me. I don't want the homework. It's my first day here. Well, if you don't want it then don't bother me. Mark told him in all seriousness. This guy is lower B rank in magic power. Mark analyzed Lucas with his eyes. Even though Mark obviously didn't like Lucas's presence, the hunter stayed watching over Mark's shoulder. What are you writing? Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare. What's your name? Nanya. Nanya business. Lucas distanced himself and went to one of the boys. Who's that guy? He asked, pointing at Mark. Mark Williams, he's kind of a weirdo. Doesn't really talk to anyone if he doesn't have to. For the last month, all he does is write into his diary or whatever it is. Do you think he'd like if someone, let's say, took his diary? Lucas said with a smirk. Later that day, Mark was on his computer trying to book his reevaluation, but there were a few problems. He couldn't just go there like the first time. Reevaluation cost him $200, which he and his wallet didn't appreciate. There were about $3,000 on his bank account, which he got from the dungeon raid, his pocket money, and the money he got for homework. If he wanted to move out after graduation, he'd have to raid several dungeons. Time for thinking. Mark left the classroom to go to the toilet and Lucas saw the opportunity. He ran over to Mark's desk looking at the hardback book. Grimoire. Is he delusional? He snickered when he saw the title. He then grabbed the book ready to hide it somewhere in the classroom. To his surprise, the book quickly turned cold, really cold. Lucas dropped it on the ground, looking at his burned hand. What the hell? He said, confused. Mark walked through the door, picked up his grimoire from the ground, and with an indifferent look told Lucas. I said don't bother me. He then got back to his seat and proceeded with his normal routine. I'm glad I made the preemptive cooling. It saved me from some troubles. After school, as Mark was leaving school, someone called out to him. Hey, you're a hunter, right? Mark continued walking, hoping that the annoyance will just stop. I know you can hear me. Lucas followed him from behind. What do you want, dude? Mark finally turned around. This is going nowhere. Just stop being a hindrance. If you're a hunter then let's fight. Lucas said with enthusiasm. Why? Mark asked with dead eyes. It's fun. You're not a coward who'd back down, right? Lucas told him with a growing smirk. Fuck off, you can think of me as the most cowardly coward in the world for all I care. Hey, that's what I thought. You're a little pussy. After hearing those insults, Mark couldn't help but smile. Okay, this fight is silly, but why not? He thought to himself. All right, if you want to fight so bad we can. Mark said, waving it off. He opened up the grimoire on page 2, created a magic circle on his hand, and started tinkering with the settings. Page 2, Magic Siphoning Barrier, Initial Durability, B rank, Locator, Magic Flare, State, Immovable, Duration without input, 24 hours, Mana Purification, On, Diameter, 2 meters, Permeability, Gas and Light. So where do you wanna fight? Asked Lucas, stretching. You're so eager. How about right here and right now? Jesus Christ, I hope nobody heard that. Not waiting for anything, Lucas started counting. 3, 2, 1, let's go. He immediately started running towards Mark. However, he was quickly met with a wall. Mark fired off a small projectile and when it landed on Lucas, a barrier instantly formed around him. He ran face first into the barrier. What the fuck is this? He shouted, not so happy right now. Barrier, Mark flatly answered. I know that, genius. But why is it so strong? He shouted, punching the barrier with a golden aura around his fist. You know what's neat? That barrier is what I think a B rank mage would make, so if you had a weapon you could have broken it. However, now you have to wait for an A rank to pass by because that barrier will only get stronger with time. Mark said with a wide smile. Is this funny to you? I'm stuck here in a hamster ball and you're laughing. This shit's kinda funny, not gonna lie. Don't worry too much, though. The barrier will disappear after a day. A day? Are you kidding me? Let me out, you fucker. He punched the barrier once again angrily. You wanted to fight, then fight with a wall. Mark just turned around and walked away with a smile plastered on his face. He's a B rank hunter. The weather will do nothing to him and he at least has some time for himself. Mark thought to himself. Lucas was punching, kicking, and nearly pissing his pants from the anger. The people passing by looked at him strangely, not even thinking about trying to help him. After calming down, Lucas decided to think about his situation more clearly and find a solution. He picked up his phone and dialed the only person he thought could help him. Dad, the person you're calling is currently unavailable. If you want to leave a message. Come on, Dad, just when I need you, you're in a dungeon, as always. Lucy. *BZZN*BZZN. Hello, sis, can you please come to help me? Why, what happened? Are you alright? She asked in concern. I'm stuck in a barrier. Lucas said, embarrassed by the situation. Muffled giggling. Don't laugh at me. This is serious. Lucas said, blushing. Okay, no problem, I'll drive to you. Where are you? She said, trying not to laugh. In front of the school. Please come quick. Half an hour later. Blonde-haired girl about 20 years of age stepped out of her car and walked over to the translucent barrier. Lucas was still sitting in his hamster ball. I cannot resist asking. How exactly did you get into this thing? Lucy asked, grinning at the absurdity of the situation. One of my classmates is a hunter, so I wanted to fight him. Lucas told her timidly. And he locked you in this barrier? A quiet, yeah, escaped from his mouth. Did he want to fight? Not really. Did you provoke him to fight you? Maybe. I think you kind of deserve this. Quote. Well, Dad's in a gate right now and I'm not gonna bother anyone from the guild right now. I can only keep you company until Dad gets out. That's fine. Do you like your new school? Yeah, better than the last one. Really? Did you find some friends? I'm not that fast. They talked until the sun started setting. 2 hours later, from a 5 meters tall blue vortex came a group of hunters. Leading them was a blonde-haired man in his 40s holding a menacing-looking dagger. A man in a suit came running towards the guild master. Sir, your daughter said you should call her when you come out. Thank you, Bob. I'll do just that. Alexander then turned to the miners. Let the mining team in. The boss is incapacitated. Re-evaluation. While Lucas was waiting in his life capsule, Mark headed to the FBH. He entered the building and looked over the receptions. It's all right. Just walk over there and say that you booked a re-evaluation. Nothing awkward will happen. It's just a re-evaluation. After encouraging himself, he walked to the front desk. Yes, asked the receptionist. I'm here for a re-evaluation at 16:45. All right, give me your ID card. Mark handed over the card. Great, now we'll have you wait for about 5 to 10 minutes. The waiting room is right behind those doors. She pointed to the other side of the hall. Thank you. Mark then stepped inside the room he was in a month ago. He took a seat and waited. There were few other people waiting for their evaluation. They were mainly E ranks with an occasional D rank. After 5 minutes, an old lady peeked out of the evaluation room. Mr. Williams, come in. She said. Not this old librarian again. He came in with the grimoire under his armpit. You see that giant ball? Put your hand on that, said the lady next to a bunch of monitors. Mark gladly obliged and put his hand on the ball. A rank. You're here for a re-evaluation, right? Many people come here, but I remember the higher ranks. They don't come every day. Yeah, I was here about a month ago. I remember, she exclaimed. You have that useless eye trick. Yes, that's me. Now put your hand into that thing and squeeze. You already know what to do. Once again Mark did what she told him to do. D rank strength, nothing changed there. So that must mean you got some new skill, otherwise you'd be an idiot coming here. Are you an idiot, Mr. Williams? Quote. I'm just joking around. Now show me your skills. Mark opened up the grimoire, poured his mana into the first page, and when the magic circle appeared he started modifying the spell. Page 1, Stream of Fire, Temperature, 1500 degrees Celsius, Range, 1 meter. Where should I aim? He asked. It's irrelevant, just don't shoot me. The walls are strengthened with mana crystals. As Mark aimed his hand towards the ceiling he fired off the spell. The magic circle started spewing out dazzling white flames. Mark himself was insulated by a barrier incorporated into the spell, but the old lady was not. Stop it, this is not a furnace, shouted the woman. Mark dispelled the magic circle and closed his grimoire. You'll get an A rank. Just get out of here. It's hard to breathe. Mark left the bureau in a good mood. He got his new license. Lucas hopefully won't bother him anymore. What a good day. 2 hours later, a BMW parked in the high school parking lot. Alexander Wright, the leader of the Viper Guild, got out and walked to the translucent barrier surrounding his son. What happened? He asked, concerned. Nothing serious, he wanted to fight his classmate and got trapped in this mess. Lucy explained the situation of her brother. That's that temperament of yours. Alexander knocked on the barrier with his knuckle. What's the name of your classmate? That's the first thing you ask me, said Lucas, feeling offended by the lack of care from his father. You are fine, I can see that with my eyes. It's just a harmless prank. Just get me out of here. Got it. Alexander pulled out a dagger from his holster and drove it into the barrier. To his surprise, the barrier didn't collapse because of the hole he just created. He then punched it with all his might, shattering the barrier to pieces. Who's your classmate? Yuri Orlov, asked Alexander in awe. His name is Mark Williams. Can we go home? I'm cold and hungry. Yeah, I'll just look up your classmate, Alexander said with a phone in his hand. He brought up the FBH website which made the records of all hunters public. Mark Williams, you say? He got his rank updated today. He's an A-rank mage. Really? Show me, Lucy said. Alexander handed her the phone. Wait, I know this guy, she exclaimed when she looked at Mark's picture. From where? Asked her father. We met at a bus stop, a few days ago. He was coming back from a dungeon. Alexander looked through the information provided by the FBH. It seems he doesn't have a guild yet. Then find him and get him to your guild, Lucy said with enthusiasm. Alexander hummed in agreement. I'll certainly offer him a place in the guild. There are never enough capable mages, and if he made this barrier then he is capable enough. Yes, rope him right in, said Lucy. You know I still exist, right? Asked Lucas. Right, I got completely off track. We should head home. It's getting late, concluded Alexander. I'll go back to the dorm. Say hi to Mom. I will. Have a good night. Bye, said Lucas. The Wright family then drove off the parking lot. At home, Mark told his dad that he was at Drew's place, which was not entirely false. He stopped there for an hour before taking the bus back home. He did not really have a good reason to lie to his dad like that. It was just uncertainty. What if he didn't approve of his ambitions as a hunter? He knows his dad, he isn't like that. However, there was always the tiny possibility of what if. Mark still lived under his roof, so he had to abide by his rules. Telling it to his mom would be much easier. She probably wouldn't even care that much. How would his brother react when he finds out that Mark is an A-rank hunter? Will he be proud or concerned? Who knows? I really need to get out of school. Guild invitation. Mark was once again sitting in the classroom waiting for the lessons to start. His updated hunter license should arrive in the mail today. It's not like he absolutely needs it. He is still registered with the FBH, which administers all the gates in America. It's just proving his rank on the gate site without a license is a bother. Some people could doubt his identity if he just showed his account on the website, and some problems could arise. Mark rather chose to wait for another day before diving into the dungeon alone and risking these complications. He had to finish his new spells anyway, so he was in no rush. Mark, I'm sorry, said Lucas. Yesterday I took it a little too far and I won't do it again. Okay, Mark said, a bit unsure about how to respond. I mean, it's fine, you don't really have to apologize. Just don't bother me in the future. Lucas walked away without a word. Yesterday wasn't a good day for him. He was stuck in a weird place for a tad bit too long. Then his father told him to apologize for something very minute, and he got scolded by his mom for inciting a fight on his first day of school. Mark was oblivious to his troubles. He kept on meticulously preparing for his first solo raid. After school, Mark was on his way home. The streets were filled with excited students and he was just walking, ignoring his surroundings and staring down at the sidewalk. Out of nowhere, he was stopped in his stride by a hand holding him by the shoulder. With no panic in his eyes, he turned around to see who was stopping him. There stood a man in his 40s enveloped by a dark green smoke-like aura. He wore light armor, which looked fairly expensive. Do you need something? Asked Mark. Yes, actually. Are you Mark Williams? Yep, that's me. Just have to make sure I have the right person, you know. The man said with a smile. Let's get straight to the point. Maybe you've heard of me. My name is Alexander Wright. I'm the leader of the Viper Guild. Alexander showed him a business card. It was pretty cool looking, with a slithering snake on the edges. Blonde hair, stealth skill, and a dark green aura. That makes sense. What do you want from me then, Mr. Wright? Mark, would you be interested in joining the Viper Guild? Not really, Mark answered flatly. Seriously? Asked Alexander, flabbergasted. Yes, said Mark, not understanding what he is asking. Do you have another guild in mind or something? We are second in the US Hunter rankings. I take pride in that position. I don't intend to join any guild. So you want to create one on your own? That's a thorny path if you are not an S rank. Alexander started jumping to conclusions. No, I think you misunderstood me, mister. I don't want to join, create, or have anything to do with a guild. That just sounds like a bother to me. Hey, I almost forgot people like that also exist. Well, it's fine. If you change your decision then call the Viper Guild. We'll quickly find a place for someone with your barrier abilities. Yeah, and don't be harsh on Luke. We all make mistakes in the heat of passion. Some of us just make more of them. Alexander was suddenly engulfed in a green smoke and disappeared. I thought the name Wright was familiar to me. 20 minutes later, I'm home, Mark shouted, announcing his presence. He took off his jacket, hung it on the coat rack, and stepped into the living room. How was school? Asked his dad. Fine, pretty much nothing interesting happened. Yeah, I've got an A from the chemistry test I told you about. Niece, you received a letter by the way. It's from the Bureau of Hunters, he said holding the letter. Why didn't you tell me you were going for a re-evaluation? Mark appeared calm on the outside but he was panicking on the inside. He wasn't prepared for this conversation, but he should have been. This was brought by nothing except his stupidity. I don't know why wouldn't you want to tell me, but if you were afraid about me disapproving your life choices then just don't. I am not the best father in the world but I think I raised you well. You have your own head and I can't do anything about what happens in there. You'll be out of school half a year from now for God's sake. I just thought that you'd tell me stuff like this. I'm sorry, Dad, it's just, I didn't know how you'd react. Oh come on, I'd be proud of you regardless of whatever career you chose. You could be a garbage collector and I'd respect your choice. Thank you, and if the hunting doesn't work out, you can go do something different. Nothing's permanent and even if you lose a few years you can always get back on track. I made 2K in AD rank dungeon, he said in a quiet tone. Are you serious? His dad asked with raised eyebrows. Mark hummed and nodded in confirmation. Well, this calls for some quality ice cream. His father stood up and disappeared into the kitchen. Couldn't have said it better myself, Mark said with a satisfied smile. Alone in the dungeon. In the suburbs of New York, a gate appeared. It was reported nearly instantly by a family living nearby. Employees from the FBH arrived swiftly after to measure the gate's magical power. It was no surprise when they found out it was an E-rank gate. It was about the size of a normal door after all. There was a problem with E-rank gates in the world. Most hunters who could clear them didn't want to. They could earn much more money in the gates of their own rank. Hunters earn money primarily by selling essence stones and in the lowest ranked gates, the stones are practically worthless. Even if the gate is really good the money gained would be around $1,000 at maximum. If you divide that between 5 or more people and apply tax then it's just not worth it. The FBH has to pay random hunters to clear these gates. However, that is not a viable solution when you consider the number of gates appearing around the world. A low-rank employee by the name of Phil was stationed on the E-rank gate site in New York. Watching over gates was a very good job until something comes out of them. Fortunately, that doesn't happen very often with low-rank dungeons. Phil sat down in the cabin and enjoyed his coffee. Someone booked this gate for 1500 so if they come in time he should be home by 6 p.m. Then the door opened and a young man, looking like your average college student, came in. He wore a jacket over a hoodie and a rucksack on his back. It's pretty cold, huh? Said Phil. Yeah, can I leave my things here? Asked Mark. Of course. Mark took off his jacket and emptied his backpack. He took his priced grimoire and got ready to raid. Wait a minute, show me your license. Phil told Mark. Here, he gave him the card. Phil looked over the card. Mark Williams, A rank. Finding no problem he swiftly gave it back. There are sometimes people who want to jump into gates to end their life. Just wanted to make sure. No problem, said Mark and started walking towards the gate. It's much smaller than the D rank one. If I remember correctly it correlates with the size of the boss monster. He sighed trying to calm himself down and stepped inside the vortex of swirling mana. There was nearly complete silence and Mark couldn't see anything in the darkness. He flipped through the grimoire hoping to find the right page. Page 5, Illuminate. A small ball of light appeared floating over Mark. The spell was very energy efficient. It was consuming much less mana than his A-rank body generated. Finally able to see, Mark analyzed his surroundings. It was a cave, just like most dungeons but this time the walls were made of sandstone. The orange walls and grains of sand on the ground were an obvious giveaway. Seeing no monster in sight Mark decided to go deeper. In contrast to his first dungeon enemies were lurking behind the first corner. Locusts the size of a dog were sitting on the dungeon walls. When Mark saw the insects he flipped to the first page. Page 1, Stream of Fire. He minimized the temperature and maximized the distance to fill the whole cave with flames. Not only was the cave filled with flames, it was also filled with the sound of tiny essence stones falling to the ground. Deactivating the spell, Mark collected his earnings. One of these should fetch about $10 and I already have 8 of them. He continued through the dungeon, blasting everything that moved with fire. He could afford a little bit of leniency because of the insects' weak attack attempts. They got incinerated quicker than they could get even near Mark. However, 10 minutes later a problem arose. It was getting hard to breathe. The lone hunter was beginning to get tired by just walking, which was not a good sign. This is not good. I forgot that dungeons are an enclosed system. There is not a lot of air, especially in these narrow caves. It got better after a minute of rest, but Mark could not afford to use spells that used fire anymore. It's fine for now, but I need to resolve this issue for the future, he thought, and continued deeper into the cave system. Page 3, Automatic Rock Spike. His mana spread through the ground and walls, creating a grid of some kind. As he came near another locust, a spike grew from the wall and penetrated the insect. After experimenting with the salamander's scales, Mark became able to differentiate the magic power of a monster and a human. With this knowledge, his page 3 spell was finally usable even when there were other people around. The rucksack on Mark's back was filling up with essence stones the size of his thumb. There were exactly 97 of them. Half an hour has passed and all of the locusts disappeared. The passage was beginning to widen. Mark smelled something was strange. More literally than he wanted to, because there was a foul stench present. There is probably a boss monster behind that corner. He flipped to the 4th page and prepared his next spell. Considering the strength of the salamander, this shouldn't be a problem, he thought, and stepped into the hall. There were several sandstone pillars and decorations on the walls. On the next side of the room stood an undead covered in bandages. The mummy looked at Mark with its one functional eye and began running towards him. Surprisingly to Mark, it ran very fast even though it was limping and had its back hunched over. Page 4, Targeted Freezing. Ethereal flare left his hand and embedded itself in the mummy. Unfazed, it continued running at Mark. Unfortunately for the monster, it was quickly intercepted by several streams of supercooled water. Seeing that this spell barely worked on the salamander last time Mark tried to improve it, and the result was a success. The mummy became a statue encased in ice. However, it was not dead yet. It was still watching the hunter with its one eye. Creepy, but also hard to deal with. Undead are a thing I hope to never come across. Page 3, Automatic Rock Spike. Size, 2 meters. A huge thorn went through the frozen monster, crushing it. This needs a better solution. I need to improve so many things. I've been feeling like shit for the past few days. I have a sore throat and my head hurts. I have some pre-written chapters, but if I don't get better soon, then there will